Welcome back to Conversations with Troy. And we're going to talk a little bit about Gay Pride this year in Cuba. So, what was it like?
I've got to tell you, it was just incredible. The Cinetex conference, again, I watched people get up and talk, and they raised all kinds of questions. They had groups I'd never heard of from the gay community. There were about 500 people at the conference.
Wow.
And it was held in a labor, the Communist Party labor auditorium in their big building in Havana. And it was just really interesting to me. Again, I had my translator sitting behind me, the row behind me, so he could lean up and translate everything for Mona West and I, because Philip didn't care so much. He thought, well, you two have got to do the talking, so
answer the questions later.
So answer the questions later. So it was really eye-opening for me. I remember one of the groups that got up was an organization of butch women. This was I can't remember exactly their name in Spanish and how it would have translated in English, but it was about butch lesbians, and it was an organization just for butch lesbians.
Only.
I mean, it was real interesting. But they absolutely have the attention of their government
Nice.
because of the work of Mariel Castro. She is viewed as a hero by the GLBT community. She started the Gay Pride Parade in Havana, and they said the way she did it was she went over to the seawall, one of the most famous places, and it's gorgeous. I mean, Havana is this the Spanish colonial buildings, the mixture of everything, but this seawall that everybody goes to, where people are married, but it's miles long, right in downtown Havana. And when we, arrived down there, it was for the Gay Pride Parade. First,
but she started it at the seawall?
The way she started it was at that seawall after she really got Cinetex. And Cinesex, I'm sorry, I keep trying to say the word wrong in Spanish. Once her mother's work, she continued on. Her mother was interested in human sexuality, and she taught her daughter, Mariella, to not look with disdain on people who were different.
Right.
And one of those groups were homosexuals. No matter what the revolution had said, and her mother really beat it into her head.
Have an open mind.
You've got to take up for people who are downtrodden, even in our community. And so she, this was 5 years ago, she went to the seawall where the gay community hung out, and here were these 5 transgendered folks, all in their dresses and all. And she walked up and she said, "Come on." She says, we're going to take a little stroll down the street here. And that was the first Gay Pride Parade event that took place in Cuban history. And ever since then, it's grown. And people are now going to Havana, and I was really honored to be there for the 5th anniversary. There were several things that happened when we came up to Havana. Here, we had 50 young people in a bus coming up with us. I'm the oldest person on the bus, 75. And the next one was the 73-year-old gentleman who had been locked up for being gay.
Right.
And when he was 20 years old, and had spent 2 years in a rehabilitation camp for homosexuals. And so Luis and I really liked Luis. He was my age. And Philip, I caught up with Philip and I said, he's my Cuban boyfriend. Because we were the two old persons there. Everybody else was much younger than us. a few sprinkling of 40s, but most in their 30s and 20s.
Yeah.
When we arrived in Havana on the bus, we parked the bus. Then we got out and walked around to the street where the parade was going to take place. When we turned the corner, it was like Gay Pride Parade in New York or Los Angeles.
Nice.
The crowds on the sides of the street, And just as we did, Hector and Philip took off to go up to the parade. I was stopped all at once by a reporter, and he said, "Are you Reverend Troy Perry?"
Wow.
I didn't realize until later he was from the Cuban Press Association, and I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Would you wait here, please?" Next thing I know, I wanted Mona there with me again to see
Yeah.
a woman in a collar.
Right.
And all at once, my God, there were 40 television cameras in our face.
Wow.
Associated Press, MSNBC, you name it, they were there. And they immediately started the questions. And it was all about, everything from what I thought about Cuba to making a difference to marriage. They knew that Philip and I had been part of the lawsuit that won here in California
Right.
before Proposition 8, and that we had won here in front of our U.S. Supreme Court. That was the biggie, because all at once, with the discussion going on in the National Assembly of Cuba, at Cinesex, the conference, Mariela Castro, all at once when it was translated for me, I could hear what the argument was then. It wasn't so much whether it's going to happen, but what we're going to call it.
Right.
And I have a feeling, but I'm not sure, because they really discuss things. They believe in that old communist thing that you have a lot of dialogue before you vote on anything. So whether it's going to be called civil unions or marriage. Now, I'd had Cubans there who said, "Don't mention the word marriage." Well, I didn't have to. The press.
The press did it for you.
Press.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So here we are with all this press. And when they finished that, then I went to take our place in the parade, but reporters came up. I mean, it was just all kinds, different ones. My favorite story came out of the Herald from Buenos Aires. It's their English language paper
Right.
for their capital. And they had me in the same breath with Pope John Paul, with Pope Francis, not John Paul, Pope Francis, with Obama, and, with the president of it, and their headline was, "Marriage Comes to Cuba." So every newspaper, when I went online to look at the newspaper stories and television, here we are with our Cuban pastors. They had gotten permission. They're going to hold the blessing of couples.
Right.
That was what it was supposed to be called. But no matter what we said, it wasn't going to be that way. And we're in the parade, and I'm telling you, you haven't lived till you've been to Gay Pride Parade in Cuba. It reflects their culture beautifully. They dance. They dance for about 5 minutes, then they march for 3, then they dance for 5 minutes. I mean, it is the wildest thing you've ever seen. And I mean, it is just incredible. Like I said, it's like their culture. Everybody friendly, everybody smiling. And we danced and walked our way up to the Cuban Pavilion, where the speeches would take place, the big dance.
So there was some politics as well as...
Yes, and the marriage, and...
no marriage,
no,
a blessing.
Our blessing of
Yes,
couples,
yeah.
as I've done for years before we had marriage.
Right.
And but I always use the word marriage. And it was too late, and I could tell it. So I wasn't... once I got up, I was thankful for all those, and I, was looking forward to the day when the couples could be legally married,
Right.
In the Republic of Cuba, and that it was being, discussed by the government of Cuba, and what a great opportunity. Philip can tell you But when I got up and it was time to do the ceremony, it scared me. The crowd rushed forward.
Wow.
Not just the newspapers and the cameras, but the couples. And when people saying you should be afraid in cultures, they weren't afraid at all. And every paper almost said that the first couple that came to me, one was a set decorator, the other one was something else, a physician for the Cuban government. And they said the words they said, they exchanged rings. And here we were.
What looks like a duck.
It's going to happen
Yeah.
in Cuba.
Yeah.
And with all of my heart, I really know that we, without a shadow of a doubt, we have brothers and sisters there. And we've got to remember that. We who are part of the GLBT community, not just the religious community,
Right.
but our politicians and all in our community, they need to know that there's a wonderful community. The Cuban people, again, are some of the friendliest I've ever met in my life. I thought they will be aggravated because I'm an American.
Right.
I was never, that didn't happen. When we were in Matanzas, it was so cute. A young gay couple there took Philip and I and Mona and Hector, and we went on a walking tour of Matanzas,
Right.
Cuba. And we went around to see things, and we ended up at the local gay bar outside overlooking a plaza where the theater, not the Matanzas Theater, the big beautiful colonial theater,
Okay.
that's under remodeling, as a lot of properties are there.
All right.
But here were gay kids already there, and openly, and the gay kids told us, they said, oh no, there's all kinds of gay kids. So they're gay kids who come here to cruise. They're gay kids who come here to, they're hustlers.
Right.
The police do come through and, if
Shoo people
try
away.
to shoo people away.
Yeah.
But, it's like they're more concerned with prostitution than anything else. But even that is not the way it was one time, where they would just lock you up.
Yeah.
And said those days are gone too, like every government everywhere. The Cuban government's like the American government. Sometimes we know it does not work if you try to arrest large numbers of people in any culture at a gay pride parade or at our cruising spots. When I was young,
We just change where they are.
we just changed. That's
Yeah.
right. We change people. We let them know there's more to life than this, and that's what Metropolitan Community Church has always tried to do.
Right.
And but I'm not going to have kids arrested. So the gay community in Cuba is alive and well. Now, this is another thing. There was nothing on the national news that night about the gay pride celebration in Havana, the marriage. Every other South American country carried this story.
Right.
MSNBC did in the U.S. I mean, things like that.
Right.
But they absolutely
Silent.
silenced the government was. But that's okay. But having said that, there's a lot of rumors in
Right.
the gay community. Like on our way to Havana, we just heard they're permitting the new ferry service between Key West and Havana, or whatever city where they're going to build their new ferry port at. And I knew in my mind there's no way in the world that they've had a boat leave. But and
Yeah.
I tried to say that. And they already had a joke in hand, the gay community. But they were looking for all these gay Americans. Now that will happen.
Of course.
We will be going down the GLBT community in those days when we have service where we can get on a boat and a ferry, because it's so close to the U.S.
Right.
They're our neighbors.
It's
mean,
interesting.
that's-
My mom and dad went to Cuba, but they had to go to Jamaica and then take a cruise from Jamaica to
You got
to
it.
Havana.
Yeah.
But they were very well received as well.
Yeah, there is
So-
the Cuban people, and really of the Cuban government too.
Right.
And young people, though, I said to them over and over again, I said, I want to tell you just like the U.S. I said, I want to tell you now, you're all going to have more money. You're going to have, the thing the young people miss the most is the internet. They can send email, but they can't go online
And look at things.
and look at things. And they can't wait to get their hands on iPads. They all know what they are.
Right.
They've seen Americans, Canadians, Europeans with them in their country. But there was no Wi-Fi in all of Cuba. And
Wow.
you have to go to even check your email, you have to go to a shop. And it's not cheap for the Cubans to go into a shop like we used to do years ago
Right.
to get online. And but I told them, I said, give it 5 to 10 years. Don't worry, you'll all have iPhones. Everything will happen. It's going to. And there's no way once the embargo's lifted, that'll be the end of that. And I said, don't worry, the business
A new revolution.
That's right. I said, the business people in America is causing it too. They want to get down there. They view that as an incredible market for American products.
Correct.
And so this is even in America with members of perhaps the Republican Party who doesn't care that we're opening it up and don't want it opened up. The business people in the Republican Party do.
Yeah.
They see that it'll make a difference for us. And so there are people, everybody from JetBlue, the president, everybody else has been down meeting with the government. But I got there before the Pope and the president. I got there before our embassy was open.
And it sounds like you were very well received.
I cannot tell you how well I was received by the larger Cuban community that I met, as well as the gay community, as well as the communist government.
Yeah.
And I have been, as I always say, being invited by presidents didn't hurt either, because the Cuban government, I'm sure, goes online. And don't worry, they check you out. And so they were not afraid of me. In fact, they were delighted that I had come, and that the Mona and Hector and Philip and I were all there, and they treated us incredibly well.
Nice. Well, thank you very much for another great conversation. And thank you for joining us for Conversations with Troy, and tune in again for more conversations. Thank you.